Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, Contemporary Issues. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In our series, we are looking at contemporary issues which confront the Muslim nation today. Western culture and Western society has arrived at certain positions, taken certain attitudes towards a variety of different practices, and they look at those who do not conform to their ways, follow their views, as being backward and in need of guidance and instruction. So what we're doing is we're looking at some issues which the West oftentimes state with regards to Muslims, and which there are very reasonable and logical explanations, if only those who point the finger. The issue we're looking at in this segment is that of divorce. Divorce being easy, as it's typically portrayed in Western society, that divorce in the Muslim world is just for a man to say, thou art divorced, thou art divorced, thou art divorced, and that's it, finish. Divorce is over. This is the general impression given. I know myself, prior to becoming a Muslim, this is the understanding which I had. I received from the media. This is how it's normally portrayed. And actually there are some ignorant Muslims who actually think this too. So I won't say it's only Westerners, but there is among Muslims those who ignorantly think that merely saying you're divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced ends a marriage. That's it, divorce. That a man can do that anytime and there ends the marriage. However, the reality is that the divorce is not that easy. It's not that easy. There are particular conditions which must be fulfilled before a man can pronounce divorce. For example, among those conditions is that it not be at the time of the woman's menstrual cycle. I mean, of course, somebody might say, well, what does this have to do with it? Why does it matter? Well, the Prophet forbade the pronouncement of divorce when a woman is in her menses. Such a pronouncement is invalid. A man may say it, but it's not counted. It's not considered legal. Modern science has discovered what we now refer to as PMS, premenstrual syndrome, where women regularly, because of these biological changes, there are certain psychological changes which cause the women to become very crabby, very, uptight. Any little thing sets them off. Many women go through this right at the time of menses. Just immediately before it and immediately into it, the first few days, whatever. This is a standard across the world among many women. So in order to avoid a situation where it is due to these biological changes which affect the psychology of the woman, which cause her to maybe respond to her husband in such a way which leads him then to pronounce divorce, Islam says no. Don't pronounce divorce in the time of menstruation because it may be a product of this. It's not appropriate. It's not legal. So it is not just whenever a man, he gets up in the morning, he feels, oh, today feels like a good day to divorce my wife, so I'm just going to divorce you. No, it's not like anytime, anyhow, anywhere, no. Secondly, we have to consider in the period between menses, one menses and the second menses, this period between, this is when the man is allowed to pronounce the divorce. If in that period, prior to his pronouncement, he had sexual relations with her, then it is not legal for him to make the pronouncement. It's not legal. What Islam is saying here basically is that, hey, if you have that much feeling for your wife that you would have these relations, then you shouldn't be pronouncing divorce. You need to think about it. You need to think about it for a while. So it's not permissible for him to pronounce the divorce until after she's had her menses and enters into another period between the menses. So this is another condition. So it's again, not anytime, anyhow. Thirdly, if after the man makes the pronouncement, he has sexual relations with his wife, out of desire he has, then the pronouncement is cancelled. So he has to stay clear of her. You know, he has to wait. The pronouncement doesn't end the marriage immediately. There is a waiting period. The waiting period is 3 menstrual cycles. Part of it is to make sure that the woman is not pregnant by him. And because if she just left him, they got divorced, and she left him and married somebody else immediately afterwards, then maybe she becomes pregnant. It's not certain whose child this is. You know, so in order to prevent any kind of confusion which may develop, you know, in this regard, you know, Islam gives her a waiting period in order to confirm that she's not pregnant by her husband. Also, in those 3 menstrual cycle periods, the woman and man are required to live together. Of course, in many parts of the Muslim world, a number of parts of the Muslim world, the custom is that once the divorce is pronounced, the woman goes home to her parents. This is not a part of Islamic law. They should remain in the home together. And that time should be a time giving them a period in which they can reconcile and, you know, come back together. So that waiting period there is a period which allows chance for reconciliation. Now, what also has to be taken into account here is that if the woman is already pregnant, then the period of waiting, if she is in beyond she's in a first month or in a second month, like this, a period of waiting is until she delivers. If she's already in her 6th month, meaning that she only has 3 months remaining, it's at the time of delivery, but beyond that, in her 7th month, it goes back to a 3-month period of waiting. So unless if the period is due to her pregnancy, then the divorce is held until the delivery. If it is less than 3 months, then it's taken back to 3 months. So again, it's not automatic. A man may pronounce divorce on his wife, she's in her 1st month, he has to wait 9 months before divorce comes through. This gives more opportunity, especially because the child is involved, children are involved here, you know, for that individual to be around his wife while she's pregnant, going through her changes, this type of things, being conscious and aware of the child and all these other things, in order to help them possibly come back together, work it out. Furthermore, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, in an authentic statement, had stated that the divorce pronouncement is not valid at the time of mental seizure. That is, if the man, you know, is in a rage where he loses it and he pronounces divorce, it's not valid, not counted. If he's merely angry, of course, it is valid because mostly people pronounce divorce when they're angry. But if the anger reaches the point where he's just, you know, his mind is seized, he's saying things, afterwards he said, what did I say? People are amazed at him. He's saying things, you know, he's not aware. He loses consciousness of what's around him. In that kind of state, then the pronouncement is not considered to be valid. So we have a variety of conditions which affect the process of pronouncement. Yes, it is the man who makes the pronouncement, primarily. But it is not just any time, 1, 2, 3, it's over. No. There are conditions, and there is a waiting period, etc. Now, once that waiting period is passed, the 3 monthly cycles or 3 months passes, then the divorce becomes complete. Now, what also has to be taken into account here is that if the woman is already pregnant, then the the period of waiting, if she is in beyond she's in a first month or in a second month, like this, a period of waiting is until she delivers. If she's already in her 6th month, meaning that she only has 3 months remaining, it's at the time of delivery, but beyond that, in her 7th month, it goes back to a 3-month period of waiting. So if the period is, due to her pregnancy, greater than 3 months to delivery, then the divorce is held until the delivery. If it is less than 3 months, then it's taken back to 3 months. So again, it's not automatic. A man may pronounce divorce on his wife, she's in her 1st month, he has to wait 9 months before divorce comes through. This gives more opportunity, especially because the child is involved, children are involved here, for that individual to be around his wife while she's pregnant, going through her changes, this type of things, being conscious and aware of the child and all these other things, in order to help them possibly come back together, work it out. Furthermore, Prophet ﷺ, in an authentic statement, had stated that the divorce pronouncement is not valid at the time of mental seizure. That is, if the man, is in a rage where he loses it and he pronounces divorce, it's not valid, not counted. If he's merely angry, of course, it is valid because mostly people pronounce divorce when they're angry. But if the anger reaches the point where he's just, his mind has seized, he's saying things afterwards, he said, what did I say? People are amazed at him. He's saying things he's not aware. He loses consciousness of what's around him. In that kind of state, then the pronouncement is not considered to be valid. So, affect the process of pronouncement. Yes, it is the man who makes the pronouncement, primarily. But it is not just any time, 1, 2, 3, it's over. No. There are conditions, and there is a waiting period, etc. Now, once that waiting period is passed, the 3 monthly cycles or 3 months passes, then the divorce becomes complete. One may argue, from Western perspective, that's still pretty easy. In the West, for a person to get divorced, in most cases, you have to go to the court, it's a long procedure, you have to wait, and, maybe you have to fight it out in the court, and, wash each other's linen in public, he did this, he said that, he did the other, and all these kind of things, So there's a lot more complications involved. So in that respect, yes, Islamic divorce is relatively easy. It's not that easy as portrayed initially, as I said, but there is a certain amount of ease there. But this goes back to a basic concept, that the marriage is a contract. It's like a business contract. It's on the same level from the Islamic perspective. In the West, marriage came out of a tradition, Christian tradition, where marriage was not to be broken. As Jesus was supposed to have said, that what God has joined in the heavens, let no man separate. So divorce was canceled, not allowed. And to this day in Catholicism, there's no divorce. No divorce. A man may separate in his bed from his wife if he finds her committing adultery, etc. But divorce, no. Jesus was even supposed to have said, if a man divorces and marries another woman, it's adultery. To marry a divorced woman is adultery. These supposed statements attributed to Jesus, of course, from a Muslim perspective, we don't accept this. This is not in keeping with Jewish law. And Jesus clearly had stated that he didn't come to break the law, he came to uphold it. And that no one would enter paradise, heaven, until every iota of the law was fulfilled. So, these kind of statements we don't accept. This is erroneous. But it is from this foundation that Christian society, took this position, no divorce. And from that, Western legal systems are suffering from it. Of course, they're trying to find ways and means to make it easier. I mean, they have what they call Mexican divorces, where people who have the money, they can fly down to Mexico, in a matter of an hour. It's very famous for its business there in Mexico. But from a Western legal perspective, the norm is that it takes a long time. But from the Islamic perspective, this is a contract. And in contracts, when people make an agreement, you sign, I sign, we've got an agreement here, this is based on you saying, I agree, I do. In the marriage, I do. When you want this contract to end, what do? You say, I don't. The contract's over. We no longer agree. We'll end the contract. It's relatively simple. Similarly, from the Islamic perspective in the divorce, the person comes in saying, I do for the marriage. They're able to go out by saying, I don't. So there's relative ease in that respect. It avoids a lot of the costs and the problems, etc., which are involved in Western-style divorces. But it is not that easy as to be merely a triple statement of the individual to his wife, you're divorced, and that's it. So this is the first point with regards to divorce, which needs to be considered. And Western society is moving more and more towards the Islamic-style divorces, which are simpler, conjugal, what they call prenuptial agreements, where people are writing out contractual things prior to the marriage. It's going more and more towards the Islamic-style marriage, that is a contract. People are coming together, agreeing to come together. There are certain conditions, etc., obligations and rights, and whatever else they agree on, that's between them. And consequently, of course, if they want to end this, they're able to end it. People look at with regards to divorce is the common misconception that divorce is the man's right. Woman has no right to divorce in Islamic law. The man pronounces divorce, that's it. This is not, in fact, correct. A woman may pronounce divorce as the man pronounces divorce if at the time of the marriage she puts it in her contract. These are amongst the things, because when the marriage is taking place, the judge will ask the woman and the man, are there any conditions you'd like to include in your marriage contract? And if she says, among the conditions is that I have the right to pronounce divorce like my husband, and the husband does not object, the husband-to-be doesn't object, then it's in the contract, she has the right just as he does. This is one method. Furthermore, if at any time in the marriage, things are not working out, for example, but the husband is reluctant, and she says, give me permission, and he gives her permission to pronounce it, she can then pronounce it as he did, following the same basic conditions. Thirdly, a woman may institute divorce from her side through the court. The court instituted divorce known as khula, where she approaches the courts, presents her case, and the court acts on her behalf, calls up the man and begins the process of divorce, informing him, etc. And this, of course, is from the practice of the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, where such divorces took place in his time. Women who, for reasons, because of course somebody saying, well, it has to be for a really major reason. No. If a woman finds herself in a situation where, she cannot stand to live with this person any longer, that is enough reason. As it existed in the time of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. A woman came to him and said, there's nothing wrong with my husband, he's a good man. Looks like she got married without really, seeing him first or whatever, arranged marriage, she got into it, and it's just became a mess for her. She feared for her religion. She was treating him badly when really he was a good man. So she asked the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ asked her, are you willing to give back your dowry? Because the dowry which was given, in the case of female instituted divorce, she has to give back the dowry. In which case, she answered, when the Prophet ﷺ asked her, she said, I'll give him twice the amount. And he said, no, just give him back what he gave you. And he called the man and processed the divorce. So a woman may pronounce divorce if she's given that right at any point in the marriage, or if she has that right included in her marital contract. Thirdly, she may also institute a court proceeding for divorce, which is based on her own needs, etc., etc. So the idea that divorce is the man's right, no. Yes, primarily, as I mentioned earlier, it is the right of the man to make the pronouncement, but it's not an exclusive right. It's put initially in his hands because he is the one in authority in the home, in the family. It has to do with issues of authority, part of the family structure. So he has primarily that right. However, it is not an absolute right. And there are conditions to pronounce it, and women may also pronounce it if certain conditions are met. So with that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of the program. We will continue in our next segment looking at the consequences of divorce and issues of alimony. Now, this has become a contemporary issue, especially in India, where the courts sought to, where it doesn't exist. We will look at the issues surrounding it. Why in Islam, after divorce, there is no alimony per se. I hope you'll be with us in this next segment of our program, dear viewers, and I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.